I did it. I bought myself a downhill bike. This is the Commencal Supreme DH V5.
Blue, you're my boy!
And I have a lot to say about it. I love this bike. This past winter, I decided that I was going to get a bike park pass up at Whistler for me and my son for the summer. And I was incredibly curious to try what a downhill bike would feel like. So I started putting together this build. First thing I did was order up the frame from Commencal. And then I started piecing together all of the parts. If you followed my channel before, you know that I'm pretty picky on my builds. I have specific parts that I really like to use, and I'm really conscious of the ergonomics to fit my body. This bike is set up to have a reach of 435 millimeters, just like my Forbidden and my e-bike. It's a good fit for me, and I'm just used to it, and I love that all three of my bikes have that same setup. With my other builds, I put a lot of emphasis on keeping the unsprung weight really light. I got light rims, I got light tires, light cassette. With this build, it was all about being burly. When you're up in Whistler riding 5, 6, 7 hours, you put so much mileage on the bike, and the brake bumps are horrendous. You're traveling at high speeds, and you are plowing through some crazy shit. So with this bike, I went with burly aluminum rims, I went with DH casing tires. I didn't worry at all about going light or saving any weight here or there. This bike probably comes in at close to, 38 pounds. It's probably heavier than my e-bike. But man, the difference on the trail, it's incredible. I went back-to-back days on this bike and my Forbidden Dreadnought just to see what the difference was like, and it was night and day. The Forbidden held its own, it was great, but this bike in the park, oh my god, it was just so smooth, it just sucked everything up. I felt so much more confident. Even on the blue trails where you're flying through brake bumps and kind of blown out berms, this bike just felt so much nicer than going through it all on my enduro bike. For those of you who know me, you know that I like to pick specific parts. And on this bike, it's no exception. I made some decisions on this bike that are a little bit different. I'm excited to run through it and show you what I did. Okay, let's start with the frame. This is the Commencal Supreme DH V5. It's made of aluminum, it's a virtual high pivot. This one's a size small with a reach of about 435 millimeters the way it's set up. Perfect size for me. It's a mullet, 29 front, 27.5 in the rear. For the shock, I went with the EXT Arma. I just love these shocks. They have so much traction, they have some good setup capabilities, bottom out control, and Ben at Alba, he's really good at helping you set it up and tune it for the suspension dynamics of your bike. Anyway, I highly recommend this. They're a little bit more expensive than your average suspension, but for me, well worth the price. I've always wanted to try an Ohlins fork, and the DH38 has had so many good reviews. I ended up hunting one down on Pink Bike and got a really good price. I actually got this one for cheaper than what I could have got a RockShox or a Fox, so I decided to pull the trigger this winter. I know there's a little bit more maintenance involved in this, but I really wanted to give it a shot, and I have some good maintenance guys in town, so I don't think it'll be a big problem. I've had about 5 days out on it, and so far I really like it. It took me a while to get some of the settings dialed, as Ohlins tends to only give recommendations on the PSI, not on the rebound or the compression. So it takes a little bit of fiddling around once you have your air pressure set up. But so far, so good. I've really liked it so far. And man, going through the brake bumps compared to having a single crown, it's such a big difference. For rims, I went with the DT Swiss FR 541s. They're aluminum and they have a little bit of a wider shaped lip. And apparently with the shape of the lip, have less chance of getting flats than some of the other rims out there. Okay, one cool thing about this build, I decided to go with a single speed. This is the SB1 tensioner and rear cassette. Although I don't know if you call it a cassette if it's a single speed. But anyway, you know what I mean. And in my 5 days out in Whistler, I haven't missed the gears at all. But oh, it is so nice. There's no clanking or clicking. It's quiet. It just feels incredibly solid. I honestly don't know if I'll go with a rear cassette on a DH bike moving forward. I really, really like this setup. Not only do you get that quiet drivetrain and just that maintenance-free drivetrain, it's really nice on the cockpit as well. It's all you have are the brakes. For pedals, I went with my tried and true favorite. This is the Catalyst by Pedaling Innovations. I have an affiliate link down below if you'd like to buy some. Any proceeds I make from it, I'll donate to the trail builders. These pedals offer so much support, I like to call them the Wonder Bra of pedals. I don't get any foot pain and I get less calf fatigue using them. Highly recommended. Love them. For brakes, I went with the Magura MT7s. I wanted to try something a little different, and I'm really happy with this choice. One of the nice things about Maguras is the brake pads are magnetic, and it's easy to swap out the pads. You can even do it with the wheel on. It's a really nice touch and makes maintenance really easy. So far, my first 5 rides, I've really liked the power they offer. I like the modulation. I just really like the feel of these brakes. For rotors, I went with the Maguras 203 on the front and 203 on the rear. It's downhill, you need stopping power, and you need the brakes to really last. Another feature of this bike that I really like is the hub. This is a rear hub by Tairin It's a guy that works out of Vancouver. He's done work for a lot of other companies. This is a completely silent hub and has about 9 degrees engagement, which is really good for downhill, helps with pedal kickback, and I'm really appreciating the silence on the runs. It's so nice just hearing the knobs on the dirt. It's lighter than an Onyx. With his new updates, almost 110 grams lighter. And again, with that 9 degrees of engagement, it makes it more suitable for downhill than the instant engagement. My brother had an Onyx once and I rode it, and it kind of had a soft feeling when you pedaled. This thing feels more like a DT Swiss. Anyway, I highly recommend contacting this guy if you're doing any wheel builds. He knows his shit, he's passionate, and this hub is by far the favorite hub I've ever used. As for the cockpit, I went with a similar setup to my other bikes. This is the SQLab 30X. It has a 45mm rise. I do like a high front end, and it has 12 degrees of back sweep, which has made a huge difference on my hands and wrists. On the 8-degree back sweep bars, I was really starting to get some numbness in my hands. Moving over to these 12 degrees, and that's all but gone away. I really like the 12-degree back sweep. Now, I know that's not for everyone. It depends on what your body type is like, but if you're having any issues with your hands, wrists, elbows, or shoulders, I'd suggest giving a 12-degree back sweep or even a 16 a try to see if it makes a difference. For me, it really, really helped. I also went with Revgrips grips, a little bit of extra cushion, downhill, punishing on the hands. So any little thing makes a difference, and I really do like these grips. They're expensive, but they're really nice. One other thing I was gonna mention are the cranks. These are 165mm cranks on loan from the guys at Commencal. Thanks to Oliver up in Commencal and Squamish. He worked with me on this build. He really helped me out on every step along the way. And he actually lent me these cranks until I get my 155s. And as you guys know, I really like 155 cranks. My impression after the first 5 rides, I absolutely love this bike. I just love being up at speed. It just handles all of the bumps. It's really confidence inspiring. It's a bit heavier, but when you're on the big open trails at Whistler with speed, it just handles everything so well. Even in the air, and I'm not a jumper, it's just so nice how this bike handles the landings. It just sucks everything right up. I just really enjoy the ride. When I was thinking of putting this together, I had a few friends kind of question if I really needed a DH bike. Do you really need a DH bike? Absolutely not. You can ride Whistler on an Enduro, but I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference being on a DH bike. I enjoyed my days on this bike so much more than on my Enduro. And don't get me wrong, I love my Enduro bike, but it was built for single track Enduro trails. This bike is for bike parks, and it is a different kind of riding. So what do I mean when I say it's a lot different feel than my Enduro? I think it's a combination of the dual crown. This has a 63-degree head angle like my Enduro, but it's just got a high front end. It just sits different. And the 200 mils of travel on this, you can really feel it. You come off a jump and land, and it just feels squishy. It just feels soft. And when I say soft, I mean in a good way. I also think I really noticed the burlier tires. On my Enduro bike, I have an Assegai up front and a DHR2 in the rear. On this one, I went with Assegai front and rear, but these have DH casings over the EXO and EXO Plus casings on my Enduro. And there's just something about it. When you're plowing through rock gardens or brake bumps, it just feels more supportive. It's really quite noticeable.